Good afternoon everyone and welcome to the KP Kingdom channel. Today I'll be featuring to you my Megacolony deck profile for the August 2020 meta. I've been working really hard on this deck and I'm very happy to showcase to all of you some of the changes and personal way that I play this deck and some combo ideas that I can show you. This deck profile has been updated after the Festival Collection support, after play testing everything that the new meta got, and some of the newer decks are now popping up in the English meta. I'm really happy to show you guys this deck profile. So without further ado, let's begin. Alright you guys, so let's hop right into it. We're playing 4 copies of the MVP of the deck, which is 4 copies of True Demonic Rifle Gunningcoleo. This is the main focus of the deck, and we're going to be focusing on having our entire turn focused around its 2 abilities. The first one is just the on-place ability that lets you possibly get an additional drive check or 2 more drive checks depending if your opponent mills a grade 3. And then the second one, which will allow you to dictate how your opponent will guard depending on what they mill from this ability. This is still a really amazing card to play. I don't know why it gets so much hate. I think the fact that because the way this deck has so many different play styles, there's so many variations of the deck that people just don't know where Gunningcoleo stands. I still think that Gunningcoleo's ability, depending on what you get for the mill skill, will determine and dictate how your turn will go. If you get the grade 0 mill that prevents your opponent from guarding with grade 0s from the rest of the turn, I believe that it's best to play as aggressively as you possibly can on that turn. And then if your opponent mills something like a grade 1, 2, or 3, then that should tell you that you probably need to take the next turn to just set up your defenses while still weighing down your opponent with your attacks. After all, this deck does really well, and the way that this deck is built is that turtling is not hard for this deck at all. And with the introduction of some of the newer cards that I'm personally playing in this deck, I think that this deck's ability to maintain its defenses even into your opponent's turn is really amazing. So having Gunningcoleo being able to do all that for us and be able to set up and just dictate how your opponent will play is really amazing to have. Next up, we play 3 copies of Machining Stag Beetle. Overall, this is a really amazing card. If I did have a 4th one, I would play one more. I'm just waiting for it to come online. But Stag Beetle's ability to help us with depending on our matchups is still really amazing. And the fact that this card you mainly play it for to get your water gangs out of the soul, ideally this is the first card that you want to ride before you go into your Gunningcoleo or to any other grade 3s that you may want to go into. But this card just helps us set up for our next turn without any cost. Is still very helpful, and the fact that it works on Vanguard and rearguard is amazing as well. Next up, we play 1 copy of Unrivaled Blade Rogue Cyclomatooth. This is just to help us play more aggressively. Our grade 3s in this deck with a lot of units such as Mantis and Hornet are really just our toolbox cards, as that's what their main purpose is for. So having Cyclomatooth be a card that we can search our deck out for if we want to play more aggressively is still very helpful. After all, it does have the mill ability and it automatically gets the 10,000 power, and if you get rid of a normal unit, you're getting a crit. But its on-ride ability isn't bad either. It just depends on where you're at in the matchup. Having this card be your first ride, other than Stag Beetle, isn't horrible. For our next grade 1, we play Strong Toxin Mutant Hell Demise. The purpose of this card is really just to help activate your water gang. This is just another card that you place it to set up for water gang. I only feel like 1 copy is necessary simply because we are playing the new grade 1 promo that helps us move through our deck much faster. And it's a grade 1, so it has 10,000 point shield, and I'd rather play that instead of another grade 3 that has no shield value and doesn't really do too much for the deck. 1 copy of Death Warden Antlion. I play Antlion simply because there are times where if I need to go for that kill turn, or if I do have the opportunity to go for the kill turn, I'll go in Antlion just to guarantee I have the extra power and critical to do so. Because with Antlion's ability, it just helps, especially when you combine it with your Phantom Black, to make sure you get an unguardable attack. So if your opponent's at 4 damage, you have Antlion and Phantom Black, and you've got the 0 mill from Gunningcoleo, it's really helpful. But even not getting that 0 mill before and then adding whatever triggers you can on top of the skills is still really good too. Moving on to grade 2s, we play 4 copies of Machining Mantis. This card's still really amazing card, honestly a solid staple of Megacolony. I don't even think that with the new support you're not going to see this card not being played at all. This card just helps us make sure we guarantee, or not guarantee, but helps guarantee that that we pretty much get our grade 3 to go into our next turn. It's not a guarantee, however, this card helps assist us in getting our grade 3, seeing as how our deck plays our grade 3 as toolbox units. Being able to search for whatever grade 3 you need specifically or increase your chances of seeing that is still very helpful. This is your solid ride target for grade 2, as this is the unit that you want to go into, but there is one more card that you can play on grade 2 that's coming up now. Our next grade 2 is the dreaded I say dreaded about this card because I personally do not like this card, but unfortunately it is a card that we have to play. So the thing about Water Gang is with this card, it's simply just a stand up and draw 2, but this is also your main resource engine in your deck. Water Gang gives you soul, it gives you 2+ draw and simply for 1 counterblast. And in this deck, in case you haven't noticed, a lot of our abilities currently do not require a lot of counterblast, as you're mainly using either for Cyclomatooth, Water Gang, and Mantis. But with Water Gang, it helps us get soul, draw 2, and we do have to play, that's why we have to play this card. Unfortunately, Megacolony right now at this moment does not have too many cards that offer us the ability to get a lot of draw power. We do have a lot of search power, but the search power either comes from 1 unit or an on-hit unit, and that's just not enough. So I feel like 4 Water Gang right now is good simply because we have cards in the deck that we can play now that make it a lot faster and we don't have to wait a turn. For our last grade 2, we played 2 copies of Spear Attack Mutant Megacolony Lancer. Yeah, that's how you say that. So we played 2 copies of this card simply because the main purpose of this unit is it helps us get our grade 3s back into our soul. A lot of our abilities such as Gunningcoleo, Antlion, have to be in the soul in order for us to do that. So that's why we have to be able to get them back into the soul. Plus the ability to stop your opponents from intercepting is actually pretty good now. With decks like Altmile and other decks that have the ability with a special intercept skills, having this card to stop that from happening is really amazing if you need to get that grade 3 into soul, but that's mainly what its purpose is for. Our next grade 1 is 2 copies of Phantom Black. So we play Phantom Black to combine really with our Antlion turn, but having this card to stop your opponent from guarding with normal units is still very powerful too, because again, depending on how the matchup is going and what you can memorize in your opponent's hand, this card can essentially stop your opponent from guarding with their entire hand depending on your situation. Realistically, I only play 2 copies of this simply because Antlion is the main unit you want to pair this card up with. Play 3 copies of The Star, Powdery Dia Lady. This card is honestly amazing. For those of you that do not know, this is the Festival Collection promo Megacolony unit that has the ability where when placed from hand, you pick a unit that's at rest on your board, you stand it, and that unit will get 5,000 power. So this is the card that I was talking about that makes your Water Gang turns not as painful. It does hurt that your Water Gang will go into the soul, so the 5,000 power is pretty much pointless for this card, but you're really using it to just activate your Water Gang to guarantee that you can now stand it on your turn without having to wait a turn to draw those 2 cards. This card, until we get the grade 3 order card that lets us stand our units, this card is honestly a second best option. So overall, having this card is really amazing because this helps you activate that Water Gang in the moment. That's why we love this card. For our next grade 1, we play 4 copies of Small Captain Butterfly Officer. I mainly play this card simply because of the power buff that it offers and the fact that it moves your grade 3s into the soul. Again, the way that this deck works is that there's a lot of setup that goes into this deck, so you're just making sure that you draw and can search out your pieces so you can place them into your soul later or just help with your recovery into what you need to do. The deck does not have a real counterblast issue that I've personally experienced, since your counterblast, again, is only going to your Water Gang, Cyclomatooth, and your Mantis. But having this card to get that counter charge back if your opponent is damage denying you is still very helpful to have. For our next grade 1, we play 4 copies of Machining Hornet. This card is really amazing. This is another grade 3 searcher. You're also your ideal grade 1 ride target. With the ability to put itself into the soul on rearguard is still helpful, as we can call this card back later with Machining Stag Beetle, and having the ability to also be available on Vanguard and rearguard circles, what makes this really amazing as your first turn ride, as you don't have to, as now you have a grade 1 unit on the first turn that actually does something. For our triggers, I now play 7 critical. With this deck, I was playing the 6/6. However, I feel like 7 critical is better now, simply because now that we have cards that will soon be able to, and now to help us activate our Water Gang earlier, we don't have to worry about drawing so much into or missing out on our pieces or just not having the drop resource in our deck. Plus, with Gunningcoleo's ability and the fact that you're playing cards like some Megacolony Lancer that affects your opponent's guarding, add more pressure onto your attacks is just more helpful in my personal opinion. Then I play 5 draw, 4 copies of the Sentinel and 1 copies of the Larvador. Having more draw triggers is still helpful. The way that this deck plays is like a combo deck, so being able to draw your pieces is important. It's just that with cards like Dialady, Hell Demise, and Water Gain, being able to make sure you get into those pieces earlier, and the fact that you're maxing out Mantis and Hornet to help search your grade 3s, just makes this deck not in need of the additional draw power from your triggers especially. And then finally I play 4 heals because their heal triggers are good, they have the largest shield value in the game, and that's what we want. And our starter is the only starter that we have, Machining Worker Ant before Festival Collection. Now for the markers. To talk about the markers that you're going to be using for this deck, honestly, don't even worry about Protect 2. It's irrelevant for this deck. You're mainly going to be playing Protect 1 for the whole game, simply because you have to do a lot of rewriting, and even though you have the additional draw power in the deck and you can now have an increased chance of drawing into your perfect guards or just seeing your perfect guards, you can thin out your deck a lot faster now with cards like Water Gang and just your other abilities that help you draw or search out, which will thin out your deck. You still need to rewrite a lot, and there are decks like Chronojet, Chronofang are still a big deal. Asha's becoming more popular now. Protect 2 just isn't good, especially considering the fact that the next set is going to be introducing cards like more support for Blade Master, more support for Messiah. Narukami is still a thing. Revan retires some rear guards. You just have too many decks at the moment that can retire your board and get rid of your key pieces that you don't want your opponent to have. Dontarian's becoming a bigger thing now. Shadow Vampire is going to get some retire. So Protect 2 just isn't good with this deck, especially with all these decks that can retire your board now for just a cheap cost. And the reason why you play cards like Hell Demise and Dialady again is so that you can just activate your Water Gang on sight, which is really the only grade 2 rearguard that you're worried about losing, since that's the one that's going to be generating so much to your advantage and resources. So Protect 1 is the way to go with this deck. That's the card that you want to focus on when playing this deck specifically. Well, that is all, you guys. Thank you so much for watching my Megacolony deck profile. I'm very happy to have shown you guys this deck. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more content. And if you have any friends that enjoy playing the Megacolony deck and want a template to get started with, don't forget to share this video to your friends that are interested in building Megacolony. I know that I was late on last week's content. I've had some personal issues that I'm working on through right now and personal things I'm going through at home, and that's why there was a delay. But I promise you guys, I have a lot of content that I want to showcase to you. I have a lot of new cards that are coming through the mail, and I have a lot of deck profiles that I am very happy and very excited that I'll be showcasing you this week, Friday. Thank you so much for watching. The KP King is signing out.